problems. Otherwise, what's the point? It's got to be things that people find inspiring and make life worth living.
So what is life for you? I mean, you look at our life, and I heard you before speaking. Is it a dream? Is it
Is life a
real?
dream?
Is it a million D? What is life for Elon Musk?
I find as I get older, I find that question to be maybe more and more confusing or troubling or uncertain. I think particularly when you see the advancement of something like video games, you know, like say 40 years ago, you had video games, the most advanced video game would be like Pong, where you had like two rectangles and a dot. You're like batting it back and forth.
I played it.
Oh yeah, me too, exactly. I played Pong. Exactly, it sort of dates you a little bit. But yeah, we both played the same game. And that was like, wow, that was a pretty fun game at the time. But now you can see a video game that's photorealistic, almost photorealistic, and millions of people playing simultaneously. And you see where things are going with virtual reality and augmented reality. And if you extrapolate that out into the future with any rate of progress at all, like even 0.1% or something like that a year, then eventually those games will be indistinguishable from reality. They'll be so realistic, you will not be able to tell the difference between that game and the reality as we know it. And then it seems like, well, how do we know that that didn't happen in the past? And that we're not in one of those games ourselves?
Interesting. Interesting.
I mean, could be.
Everything is possible in life.
I mean, particularly like things seem to be accelerating to something.
Isn't it? I mean, if we look at our life, it seems in the past 100 years, life been accelerating quite fast.
Yeah.
In the past 20,
It's
much
getting
faster.
faster and faster.
Is it more slow? So my question is really, how life will be in Earth 20, 30, 50 years from now? Our education, our transport. How do you see it?
Well, I think this is one of those things that's quite difficult to predict. When you think of, say, the first controlled powered flight was 1903 with the Wright brothers. And then 66 years later, we put the first people on the moon. I mean, that, if you'd ask people, say in 1900, what are the odds of, man landing on the moon, they would have said that's ridiculous. If you try to talk to them about the internet, they would not even know what the heck what are you even talking about? Like, this sounds so crazy. But today, with a $100 device, you can video conference with anyone in the world, on the other side of the world. And if you have a Wi-Fi connection, it's basically free. It's free to have an instant visual communication with anyone, or even with millions of people. With social media, you can communicate to millions of people simultaneously. And you can Google something and ask any question. It's like an oracle of wisdom that you can ask almost any question and get an instant response. It would have been incredibly difficult to predict these things in the past, even the relatively recent past. So I think the one thing that we can be quite certain of is that any predictions we make today for what the future will be like in 50 years will be wrong. That's for sure. I mean, I think directionally, I can tell you what I hope the future has, as opposed to maybe what it will be, because this may just be wishful thinking. I hope we are out there on Mars and maybe beyond Mars, the moons of Jupiter. I hope we're traveling frequently throughout the solar system, perhaps preparing for missions to nearby star systems. I think all of this is possible within 50 years. And I think that would be very exciting to do that. And I think we'll see autonomy and artificial intelligence advance tremendously, I think that's actually quite near term. My guess is in probably 10 years, it will be very unusual for cars to be built that are not fully autonomous. 10 years.
10 years from now.
Yeah. I think almost all cars built will be capable of full autonomy in about 10 years. As it is, the Tesla cars that are made today have the sensor system necessary for full autonomy, and we think probably enough compute power to be safer than a person. So it's mostly just a question of developing the software and uploading the software. And if it turns out that the compute power, that more compute power is needed, we can easily upgrade the computer. And so that's all Tesla's built since October of last year. And other manufacturers will follow and do the same thing. So getting in a car will be like getting in an elevator. You just tell it where you want to go, and it takes you there with extreme levels of safety. And that'll be normal. It'll just be normal. Like for elevators, there used to be elevator operators. You get in, there'd be a guy moving a lever. Now you just get in, you press the button, and that's taken for granted. So autonomy will be widespread. I think one of the most troubling questions is artificial intelligence, and I don't mean narrow AI. Like vehicle autonomy, I would put in the narrow AI class. It's narrowly trying to achieve a certain function. But deep artificial intelligence, or what is sometimes called artificial general intelligence, where you could have AI that is much smarter than the smartest human on Earth. This, I think, is a dangerous situation.
Why is it dangerous? I mean, there is two views. One view is artificial intelligence will help humanity. There is another school of thought is artificial intelligence is a threat to humanity. Why is it?
Well, I think it's both. It's like one way to think of it is imagine we were going to be visited. Imagine you're very confident that we were going to be visited by super intelligent aliens in, let's say, 10 years or 20 years at the most. Super intelligent.
So you think within 20 years we'll have alien in Earth?
Well, digital superintelligence will be like an alien.
It will be like it.
Yeah.
But my question is, do you think there is other intelligent life outside the Earth?
It seems probable, but I think this is one of the great questions in physics and philosophy, is where are the aliens? Maybe they're among us. I don't know. Some people think I'm an alien. Not true. Not true.
But maybe we are alien.
Of course I'd say that,
maybe
wouldn't
we
I?
are alien, Ellen. I mean, if you look at this part of the world,
Yeah.
they believe that human beings are not from Earth. They came from somewhere else. Eve
Maybe.
and Adam came from somewhere else to Earth. So in a way, human beings alien to this land. Do you think we'll make contact with aliens within the next 50 years?
Well, that's a really tough one to say. I mean, if there are super intelligent aliens out there, they're probably already observing us. That would seem quite likely, and we just are not smart enough to realize it. But I can do some back-of-the-envelope calculations, and any advanced alien civilization that was at all interested in populating the galaxy, even without exceeding the speed of light, even if you're only moving at, say, 10 or 20% of the speed of light, you could populate the entire galaxy in, let's say, 10 million years. Maybe 20 million years max. This is nothing, in the grand scheme of things.
Once you said you want to die on Mars, why?
I don't be clear, I don't want to die on Mars. It's like, I mean, we're all going to die someday. And if you're going to pick some place to die, then why not Mars?
Okay.
You know, if we're born on Earth, why not die on Mars? Seems like maybe it'd be kind of exciting. But so I think given the choice of dying on Earth or dying on Mars, I'd say, yeah, sure, I'll die on Mars. But it's not some kind of Mars death wish. And if I do die on Mars, I just don't want it to be on impact.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
Let's come back to Earth, actually.
Okay.
You tweeted that you are building a tunnel under Washington, D.C. Why? What is it?
Well, it's a secret plot,
Okay.
just between us.
Nobody heard you?
Yeah, exactly. Please keep that secret. Well, I think this is going to sound a little. I mean, it seems like somewhat trivial or silly, but I've been saying this for many years now. But I think that the solution to urban congestion is a network of tunnels under cities. And you can, when I say, I don't mean a 2D plane of tunnels. I mean tunnels that go many levels deep. So you can always go deeper than you can go up. Like the deepest mines are taller than the tallest buildings. So you could have tunnels, a network of tunnels that is 20, 30, 40, 50 levels, as many levels as you want, really. And so given that, you can overcome the congestion situation in any city in the world. The challenge is just figuring out how do you build tunnels quickly and at low cost and with high safety. So if tunneling technology can be improved to the point where you can build tunnels fast, cheap, and safe, then that would completely get rid of any traffic situations in cities. And so I think that's why I think it's an important technology. Washington, D.C., L.A., and most of the major American cities, most major cities in the world, suffer from severe traffic issues. And it's mostly because you've got these buildings you have tall buildings that are 3D, and you have a road network that is one level. And then people generally want to go in and out of those buildings at the exact same time. So then you get the traffic jam.
Let's come back to UAE and Dubai. The first time I met you, it was 4th of June 2015 at your office in SpaceX. And I asked you, would you have a presence in UAE? And your answer was, I'm busy with China. Maybe not in the near future.
Yeah.
And almost a year and a half later, we are here. Seems time goes quite fast.
Yeah.
Why now?
Well, I think actually things are going reasonably well in China. We had some initial challenges figuring out charging and service infrastructure and various other things, but now it's actually going fairly well, and so the timing seemed to be good to really make a significant debut in this region starting in Dubai.
Okay. In your opinion, what is the new disturbing thing that will come in technology next? What's next in technology?
What's next in technology?
That will disturb the way we live, the way we think, the way we do business.
Well, the most near-term impact from a technological standpoint is autonomous cars, like fully self-driving cars. Like I said, that's going to happen much faster than people realize. It's going to be a great convenience to be an autonomous car, but there are many people whose jobs it is to drive. So in fact, I think it might be the single largest employer of people is driving in various forms. And so then we need to figure out new roles for what do those people do. but it will be very disruptive and very quick. Now, I should characterize what I mean by quick, because there are quick means different things to different people. There are over 2 billion vehicles in the world, approaching 2.5 billion cars and trucks in the world. The total new vehicle production capacity is about 100 million, which makes sense because the life of a car or truck before it's finally scrapped is about 25 years. So the point at which we see full autonomy appear will not be the point at which there is massive societal upheaval, because it will take a long time to make enough autonomous vehicles to disrupt employment. So that disruption I'm talking about will take place over about 20 years. But still, 20 years is a short period of time to have, I think, something like 12 to 15% of the workforce be unemployed.
Thank you. This is the largest global government summit. We have over 139 government here. If you want to advise government officials to be ready for the future, what is 3 things or 3 advice you'll give them?
Well, I think the first bit of advice would be to really pay close attention to the development of artificial intelligence. I think we need to just be very careful in how we adopt artificial intelligence, and to make sure that researchers don't get carried away. Because sometimes what happens is a scientist can get so engrossed in their work, they don't necessarily realize the ramifications of what they're doing. So I think it's important for public safety that we, governments keep a close eye on artificial intelligence and make sure that it does not represent a danger to the public. Let's see. Secondly, I would say we do need to think about transport in general, and there's the movement towards electric vehicles, sustainable transport. I think that's going to be good for many reasons, but again, not something that happens immediately. That'll happen slower than the self-driving vehicles. So that's probably something that happens over 30 or 40 years, the transition to electric vehicles. So thinking about that in context, the demand for electricity will increase dramatically. So currently, in terms of total energy usage in the world, it's about 1/3 electricity, about 1/3 transport, about 1/3 heating. So over time, that will transition to almost all, not all, but predominantly electricity, which means that the demand for electricity will probably triple. So it's going to be very important to think about how do you make so much more electricity.
Seem they have an easy job. That's it. There's no more challenges for that.
No, well, then I think maybe these things do play into each other a little bit. But what to do about mass unemployment? This is going to be a massive social challenge. And I think ultimately we will have to have some kind of universal basic income. I don't think we're going to have a choice.
Universal basic income.
Universal basic income. I think it's going to be necessary.
So it means that unemployed people will be paid across the globe.
Yeah.
Because there is no job, machine, robot is taking over.
There will be fewer and fewer jobs that a robot cannot do better. That's simply and I want to be clear that these are not things that I wish would happen. These are simply things that I think probably will happen. And if my assessment is correct and they probably will happen, then we need to say, what are we going to do about it? And I think some kind of a universal basic income is going to be necessary. Now, the output of goods and services will be extremely high. So with automation, there will come abundance. There will be almost everything will get very cheap. I think I think we'll just end up doing a universal basic income. It's going to be necessary. The harder challenge, much harder challenge, is how do people then have meaning? Like a lot of people, they derive their meaning from their employment. So if you don't have, if you're not needed, if there's not a need for your labor, how do you, what's the meaning? Do you have meaning? Do you feel useless? That's a much harder problem to deal with. And then how do we ensure that the future is going to be the future that we want, that we still like? No, I mean, I do think that there's a potential path here which is, and we're really getting into science fiction or create sort of advanced science stuff, but having some sort of merger with biological intelligence and machine intelligence. To some degree, we are already a cyborg. You think of like the digital tools that you have, your phone, your computer, the applications that you have, like the fact that, as I was mentioning earlier, you can ask a question and instantly get an answer from Google or from other things. And so you already have a digital tertiary layer. I say tertiary because you can think of the limbic system, kind of the animal brain or the primal brain, and then the cortex, kind of the thinking, planning part of the brain, and then your digital self as a third layer. So you already have that, and if somebody dies, their digital ghost is still around. All of their emails and the pictures that they posted and their social media, that still lives, even if if they died. So over time, I think we'll probably see a closer merger of biological intelligence and digital intelligence. And it's mostly about the bandwidth, the speed of the connection between your brain and your the digital extension of yourself. Particularly output. And output, if anything, is getting worse. We used to have like keyboards that we'd use a lot. Now we do most of our input through our thumbs on a phone. And that's just very slow. A computer can communicate at 1 trillion bits per second, but your thumb can maybe do, 10 bits per second or 100 if you're being generous. So some high bandwidth interface to the brain, I think, will be something that helps achieve a symbiosis between human and machine intelligence, and maybe solves the control problem and the usefulness problem. Getting pretty esoteric here. I don't know if this is... Yeah.
It's close.
Okay.
We got it. Out of the box. Your idea is so huge. You want to go to space. You decided to go to space. You did it. You decided that you want to land your rocket back. You failed 7 times, 8 times.
Yeah, something like that.
Then landed.
More times than I
there,
care to
actually.
count.
Yeah. How do you come with this idea, actually? Sometimes they're pushing the human limit. You are always pushing the human limit. Why?
Well, I think about what technology solution is necessary in order to achieve the particular goal, and then try to make as much progress in that direction as possible. So in the case of spaceflight, the critical breakthrough that's necessary in spaceflight is rapid and complete reusability of rockets, just as we have for aircraft. You can imagine that if an aircraft was single use, almost no one would fly. Because you can buy, like, say, a 747 might be $250 million, $300 million, or something like that. You'd need two of them for a round trip. But nobody's going to pay millions of dollars for a ticket to fly, to do air travel. But because you can reuse the aircraft tens of thousands of times, the air travel becomes much more affordable. And the same is true of rockets. So our rocket costs $60 million roughly. So the capital cost, if it can be used once, is $60 million. But the capital cost, if it can be used 1,000 times, is $60,000. So then, if you can carry a lot of people per flight, then you can get the cost of space flight to be something not far from the cost of air flight. So it's extremely fundamental. Because Earth's gravity well is quite deep, Earth has a relatively, fairly high gravity, difficulty of making a rocket reusable is much greater than the difficulty of making an aircraft reusable. And that's why a fully reusable rocket has never been developed thus far. But if you use the most advanced materials, most advanced design techniques, and you get everything just right, then I'm confident that you can do a fully reusable rocket. Fortunately, if Earth's gravity was even 10% stronger, I would say it would be impossible.
You need a team around you to deliver a lot of ideas. How do you choose your team? Based on what?
Well, I suppose honestly that it tends to be gut feel more than anything else. So when I interview somebody, my interview question is always the same. It's just, I said, tell me the story of your life and the decisions that you made along the way and why you made them. And then, and also tell me about some of the most difficult problems you worked on and how you solved them. And that question I think is very important because the people that really solve the problem, they know exactly how they solved it. They know the little details. And the people that pretended to solve the problem, they can maybe go one level and then they get stuck.
So, what was your biggest challenge in life?
Biggest challenge in life?
No challenge.
Well, no, there's a lot of them. I'm trying to decide which is the worst. I think just thinking about how to spend time. One of the biggest challenges, I think, is making sure you have a corrective feedback loop and then maintaining that corrective feedback loop over time, even when people want to tell you exactly what you want to hear. That's very difficult.
Time is over. I'll ask you just one last question,
Sure.
if you allow me. In the World Government Summit, we have so many people so many young people actually, from across the globe. If you have an advice to them, young people globally who want to be like Elon Musk, what's your advice to them?
I think that probably they shouldn't want to be.
You?
I think it sounds better than it is.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not as much fun being me as you'd think. I don't know.
You don't think so?
No. There's definitely, it could be worse for sure, but it's, I'm not sure I want to be me.
Okay.
But if, I think advice, if you want to make progress in things, I think that the best analytical framework is physics. I'd recommend studying the the thinking process around physics, like not the equations. I mean, the equations certainly they're helpful, but the way of thinking in physics is it's the best framework for understanding things that are counterintuitive. And you know, always taking the position that you are to some degree wrong, and your goal is to be less wrong over time. I think one of the biggest mistakes people generally make, and I'm guilty of it too, is wishful thinking. You know, like you want something to be true, even if it isn't true, and so you ignore the things that you ignore the real truth because of what you want to be true. This is a very difficult trap to avoid, and like I said, certainly one that I find myself in having problems with. But if you just take that approach of you're always to some degree wrong, and your goal is to be less wrong, and solicit critical feedback, particularly from friends. Like friends, particularly friends, if somebody loves you, they want the best for you. They don't want to tell you the bad thing. So you have to ask them, you know, and say, really, I really do want to know. And then they'll tell you.
Thank you very much. It's been it is great for the World Government Summit to have a legend who's creating the future for humanity, to share his thought, his idea, his vision, and his hope for life. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
All right, well, good evening, everybody. Welcome. Elon, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
We feel very privileged. We're excited to have you. Right, so I'm going to start with some questions and then we're going to open it up. Let me get straight into it. So, Bill Gates said, there is no one in our time who has done more to push the bounds of science innovation than you.
Well, it's kind of good to say.
Yeah, well, that's it. That's a nice thing to have anyone say about you. Nice coming from Bill Gates. But oddly enough, when it comes to AI, actually, for around a decade, you've almost been doing the opposite and saying, hang on,
Yeah.
we need to think about doing and what we're pushing here and what do we do to make this safe and actually
Yeah.
maybe we should be pushing as fast or as hard as we are. Like, I mean, you've been doing it for a decade. Like, what was it that caused you to think about it that way and why do we need to be worried?
Yeah, I've been somewhat of a Cassandra for quite a while, where people would, I would tell people, like, we should really be concerned about AI. And they're like, what are you talking about? Like, I've never really had any experience with AI. But since I was immersed in technology, I have been immersed in technology for a long time, I could see it coming. But I think this year was, there's been a number of breakthroughs. I mean, the point at which someone can see a dynamically created video of themselves. Like somebody can make a video of you saying anything in real time, or me. So there's sort of the deepfake videos, which are really incredibly good. In fact, sometimes more convincing than real ones. And deep real. And then obviously they're quite remarkable. Now I saw GPT-1, GPT-2, GPT-3, GPT-4, the whole sort of lead up to that. So it was easy for me to kind of see where it's going. If you just sort of extrapolate the points of the curve and assume that trend will continue, then we will have profound artificial intelligence, and obviously at a level that far exceeds human intelligence. But I'm glad to see at this point that people are taking safety seriously, and I'd like to say thank you for holding this AI safety conference. I think actually it will go down in history as being very important. I think it's really quite profound. And I do think overall that the potential is there for artificial intelligence, AI, to have most likely a positive effect, and to create a future of abundance where there is no scarcity of goods and services. But But it is somewhat the magic genie problem, where if you have a magic genie that can grant all the wishes, usually those stories don't end well. Be careful what you wish for, including wishes.
Yeah. So you talked a little bit about the summit, and thank you for being engaged in it, which has been great. People enjoyed having you there, participating in this dialogue. Now, one of the things that we achieved today in the meetings between the companies and the leaders was an agreement that externally, ideally governments, should be doing safety testing of models before they're released.
Yeah.
I think this is something that you've spoken about a little bit. It was something we worked really hard on because my job in government is to say, hang on, there is a potential risk here, not a definite risk, but a potential risk of something that could be bad.
Yeah.
Now, my job is to protect the country, and we can only do that if we develop the capability we need in our safety institute, and then go in and make sure we can test the models before they are released. Delighted that happened today, but what's your view on what we should be doing, right? You've talked about the potential risk, right? Again, we don't know, but what are the types of things governments like ours should be doing to manage and mitigate against those risks?
Well, I generally think that it is good for government to play a role when the public safety is at risk. So, really, for the vast majority of software, the public safety is not at risk. I mean, if the app crashes on your phone or your laptop, it's not a massive catastrophe. But when you're talking about digital superintelligence, I think which does pose a risk to the public, then there is a role for government to play to safeguard the interests of the public. And this is, of course, true in many fields, aviation, cars. I deal with regulators throughout the world because of Starlink being communications, rockets being aerospace, and cars being vehicle transport. So I'm very familiar with dealing with regulators, and I actually agree with the vast majority of regulations. There's a few that I disagree with from time to time, but 0.1% probably. Well, less than 1% of regulations I disagree with. So and there is some concern from people in Silicon Valley who've never dealt with regulators before, and they think that this is going to just crush innovation and slow them down and be annoying. But and it will be annoying. It's true. They're not wrong about that. But I think we've learned over the years that having a referee is a good thing. And if you look at any sports game, there's always a referee, and nobody's suggesting I think to have a sports game without one. And I think that's the right way to think about this, is for government to be a referee to make sure the sportsmanlike conduct and the public safety is is stressed, that we care about public safety. Because I think there might be at times too much optimism about technology, and I say that as a technologist. I mean, so I ought to know. And like that, on balance, I think that AI will force for good, most likely, but the probability of it going bad is not 0%. So we just need to mitigate the downside potential.
And then how, you talk about referee, and that's what we're trying to
Demis
do.
right there.
Yeah, well, there we go. I mean, and we talked about this, and Demis and I discussed this a long time ago.
We're like literally facing right.
And actually, Demis, to his credit and the credit of people in the industry, did say that.
Yeah.
I think, Demis said it's not right that Demis and his colleagues are marking their own homework, right? There needs to be someone independent, and that's why we've developed the Safety Institute here. I mean, do you think governments can develop the expertise? One of the things we need to do is say, hang on, Demis, Sam, all the others have got a lot of very smart people doing this. Governments need to quickly tool up capability-wise, personnel-wise, which is what we're doing. I mean, do you think it is possible for governments to do that fast enough, given how quickly the technology is developing, or what do we need to do to make sure we do it quick enough?
No, I think it's good. It's a great point you're making. The pace of AI is faster than any technology I've seen in history by far, and it seems to be growing in capability by at least 5-fold, perhaps 10-fold per year. It'll certainly grow by an order of magnitude next year.
Yeah.
So, and government isn't used to moving at that speed. But I think even if there are not firm regulations, even if there isn't an enforcement capability, simply having insight and being able to highlight concerns to the public will be very powerful. So even if that's all that's accomplished, I think that would be very, very good.
Okay. Yeah, well, hopefully we can do better than that.
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah. No, but that's helpful. Actually, we were talking before. It was striking. You're someone who spent their life in technology, living Moore's law. And what was interesting over the last couple of days, talking to everyone who's doing the development of this, and I think you concur with this, is just the pace of advancement here is unlike anything all of you have seen in your careers in technology. Is that fair? Because you've got these kind of compounding effects from the hardware and the data and the personnel.
Yeah. The two, currently the two leading centers for AI developers are the San Francisco Bay Area and the sort of London area. But, and there are many other places where it's being done, but those are the two leading areas. So I think if the United States and the UK and China are sort of aligned on safety, that's all going to be a good thing. So that's where the leadership is generally.
And you actually, you mentioned China there. So I took a decision to invite China to the summit over the last few days. And it was not an easy decision. A lot of people criticized me for it. My view is if you're going to try and have serious conversation, you need to. But what were your thoughts? You do business all around the world. You just talked about it there.
Yeah.
Should we be engaging with them? Can we trust them? Is that the right thing to have done?
If China is not on board with AI safety, it's somewhat of a moot situation. The single biggest objection that I get to any kind of AI regulation or sort of safety controls are, well, China's not going to do it, and therefore they will just jump into the lead and exceed us all. But actually, China is willing to participate in AI safety, and thank you for inviting them. And they, I should thank China for attending. When I was in China earlier this year, my main subject of discussion with the leadership in China was AI safety, and saying that this is really something that they should care about, and they took it seriously, and you ought to, which is great. And having them here, I think, was essential. Really, if they're not participants, it's pointless.
It's pointless. Yeah, no, and I think we were pleased. I think they were engaged yesterday in the discussions and actually ended up signing the same communique that everyone else did.
That's right.
Which is a good start, right? And as I said, we need everyone to approach this in a similar way if we're going to have, I think, a realistic chance of resolving it. I was going to, you talked about innovation earlier and regulation being annoying. There was a good debate today we had about open source. And I think you've kind of been a proponent of algorithmic transparency and making some of the X algorithms public. And actually we were talking about, we hinted on the way in.
Yeah.
He's been very concerned about open source models being used by bad actors. You've got a group of people who say they are critical to innovation happening in that distributed way. Look, it's a trick. There's probably no perfect answer, and there's a tricky balance. What are your thoughts on how we should approach this open source question, or where should we be targeting whatever regulatory or monitoring that we're going to do?
Well, the open source algorithms and data tend to lag the closed source by 6 to 12 months. But given the rate of improvement, that there's actually therefore quite a big difference between the closed source and the open. If things are improving by a factor of, let's say, 5 or more, then being a year behind you're 5 times worse. So it's a pretty big difference. And that might be actually an okay situation. But it certainly will get to the point where you've got open source AI that can do that will start to approach human level intelligence or perhaps exceed it. I don't know quite what to do about it. I think it's somewhat inevitable there'll be some amount of open source, and I guess I would have a slight bias towards open source, because at least you can see what's going on. And when it's closed source, you don't know what's going on. Now, it should be said with AI that even if it's open source, do you actually know what's going on? Because if you've got a gigantic data file and sort of billions of data points or weights and parameters, you can't just read it and see what it's going to do. It's a gigantic file of inscrutable numbers. You can test it when you run it. You can test it. You can run a bunch of tests to see what it's going to do, but it's probabilistic as opposed to deterministic. It's not like traditional programming where you've got very discrete logic, and the outcome is very predictable, and you can read each line and see what each line is going to do. A neural net is just a whole bunch of probabilities. I mean, it sort of ends up being a giant comma-separated value pool. It's like, our digital god is a CSV file? Really? Okay. So that's kind of what it is.
Yeah. No, it's that point you just made is one that we have been talking about a lot because, again, conversations with people who are developing the technology make the point that you've just made. It is not like normal software where there's predictability about inputs improving leading to this particular output improving.
Yeah.
And as the models iterate and improve, we don't quite know what's going to come out the other end, and Dennis would agree with that, which is why I think there is this bias that we need to get in there while the training runs are being done before the models are released to understand what is this new iteration brought about in terms of capability, which it sounds like you would agree with. I was going to shift gears a little bit. You've talked a lot about human consciousness, human agency, which actually might strike people as strange, given that you are known for being such a brilliant innovator and technologist, but it's quite heartfelt when I hear you talk about it and the importance of maintaining that agency in technology and preserving human consciousness.
Yeah.
Now, that kind of links to the thing I was going to ask is, when I do interviews or talk to people out and about in this job about AI, the thing that comes up most actually is probably not so much the stuff we've been talking about, but jobs. It's what does AI mean for my job?
Yeah.
Is it going to mean that I don't have a job, or kids are not going to have a job? Now, my answer as a policymaker, as a leader, is actually AI is already creating jobs, and you can see that in the companies that are starting. Also, the way it's being used is a little bit more as a co-pilot necessarily versus replacing the person. There's still human agency, but it's helping you do your job better, which is a good thing. And as we've seen with technological revolutions in the past, clearly there's change in the labour market, the amount of jobs. I was quoting an MIT study today that they did a couple of years ago, something like 60% of the jobs at that moment didn't exist 40 years ago, so hard to predict. And my job is to create an incredible education system, whether it's at school, whether it's retraining people at any point in their career, because ultimately if we've got a skilled population, then we'll be able to keep up with the pace of change and have a good life. But that it's still a concern. And what would your kind of observation be on AI and the impact on labour markets and people's jobs, and how they should feel about that as they think about this?
Well, I think we are seeing the most disruptive force in history here. We have for the first time, we will have for the first time something that is smarter than the smartest human. And that, I mean, it's hard to say exactly what that moment is, but there will come a point where no job is needed. You can have a job if you want to have a job for personal satisfaction, but the AI will be able to do everything. So, I don't know if that makes people comfortable or uncomfortable. That's why I say if you wish for a magic genie, that gives you any wishes you want, and there's no limit. You don't have those three wish limits. It's nonsense. You just have many wishes as you want. It's both good and bad. One of the challenges in the future will be, how do we find meaning in life? If you have a magic genie that can do everything you want. I do think it's hard, when there's new technology, it tends to have usually follow an S-curve. In this case, we're going to be on the exponential portion of the S-curve for a long time. And you'll be able to ask for anything. It won't be, we won't have universal basic income, we'll have universal high income. So in some sense, it'll be somewhat of a leveler, or an equalizer, because really, I think everyone will have access to this magic genie. And you'll be able to ask any question. It'll certainly be good for education. You'll be the best tutor you could, and the most patient tutor. Sit there all day. There will be no shortage of goods and services. It will be an age of abundance. I think I'd recommend people read in banks. The bank's culture books are probably the best envisioning, in fact not probably, they're definitely by far the best envisioning of an AI future. There's nothing even close. So I'd really recommend banks, and very big fan. All these books are good. I don't know which one, all of them. So that'll give you a sense of what is I guess a fairly utopian or protopian future with AI.
Which is good from as you said, it's a universal high income, which is a nice phrase, and it's good from a kind of materialistic sense, age of abundance. Actually, that it kind of then leads to the question that you posed, right? I'm someone who believes work gives you meaning. I think a lot about that as leader. I think work is a good thing. It gives people purpose in their lives, and if you then remove a large chunk of that, what does that mean? And where do you get that?
Yeah.
Where do you get that drive, that motivation, that purpose? I mean, you were talking about it. You work a lot of hours.
I do. No, as I was mentioning when we were talking earlier, I have to somewhat engage in deliberate suspension of disbelief because I'm putting so much blood, sweat, and tears into a work project and burning the 3 a.m. oil. Then I'm like, wait, why am I doing this? I can just wait for the AI to do it. I'm just lashing myself for no reason. Must be a glutton for punishment or something. So.
We call Demis and tell him to hurry up, and then you can have a holiday, right? Yeah, no, it's a tricky thing because I think part of our job is to make sure that we can navigate to that very, I think, largely positive place that you're describing.
It is, I think,
and help
largely
help
positive,
people through it between now and then, because these things bring a lot about change in the labour market, as we've seen.
Yeah, I think it probably is generally a good thing because there are a lot of jobs that are uncomfortable or dangerous or which sort of tedious, and the computer will have no problem doing that. They're happy to do that all day long. So, it's fun to cook food, but it's not that fun to wash the dishes. And the computer's perfectly happy to wash the dishes. And I guess there is, we still have sports like where humans compete in like the Olympics, and obviously a machine can go faster than any human, but we still humans race against each other, and have these sports competitions against each other where even though the machines are better, they're still, I guess, competing to see who can be the best human at something. And people do find fulfillment in that.
Yeah.
So I guess that's perhaps a good example of how even when machines are faster and are stronger than us,
We still find a way.
we still enjoy competing against other humans, but at least we do the best human.
Yeah. That's a good analogy. And we've been talking a lot about managing the risks. Just before we move on and finish on AI, is just talk a little bit about the opportunities. You're engaged in lots of different companies. You're being an obvious one, which is doing some exciting stuff. You touched on the thing that I'm probably most excited about, which is in education.
Yeah.
And I think many people will have seen Sal Khan's video from earlier this year's TED Talk about, you talked about it's like personal tutor.
Yeah, personal tutor, an amazing personal tutor.
An amazing personal tutor, and we know the difference in learning, having that personalized tutor is incredible compared to classroom learning.
Yeah.
You can have every child have a personal tutor specifically for them that then just evolves with them over time.
Yes.
That could be extraordinary. And so that, for me, I look at that and think, gosh, that is within reach at this point. And that's one of the benefits I'm most excited about. Like when you look at the landscape of things that you see as possible, what is it that you are particularly excited about?
I think certainly AI tutors are going to be amazing. Perhaps already are. I think there's also perhaps companionship, which may seem odd because how can a computer really be your friend? But if you have an AI that has memory, and remembers all of your interactions, and has read everything, you could say like give it permission to read everything you've ever done. So it really will know you better than anyone, perhaps even yourself. And where you can talk to it every day, and those conversations build upon each other, you will actually have a great friend. As long as that friend can stay your friend and not get turned off or something. Don't turn off my friend. But I think that will actually be a real thing. One of my sons is sort of has some learning disabilities and has trouble making friends actually. And I was like, well, an AI friend would actually be great fun.
That was a surprising answer. That's actually worth reflecting on. That's really interesting. I mean, we're already seeing it actually as we deliver, psychotherapy anyway. Now doing far more digitally and by telephone to people, and it's making a huge difference. And you can see a world in which actually, AI can provide that. social benefit to people. Just a quick question on X, and then we should open it up to everybody. You made a change. In one of the made many changes, but
Yeah, quite a few.
One of the changes.
You love that letter.
Yeah.
You've got a real thing about it.
You really do. You really do. One of the changes, which kind of goes into the space that we have to operate in, and this balance between free speech and moderation is we grapple with as politicians. Sure. You were grappling with your own version of that, and you moved away from a kind of manual human.
Yeah.
Way of doing it, the moderation, to the community notes. And I think that's, it was an interesting change, right? It's not what everyone else has done. It would be good to know what was the reasoning behind that? Why do you think that is a better way to do that?
Part of the problem is that if you empower people as censors, then there's going to be some amount of bias they have, and then whoever appoints the censors is effectively in control of information. So then the idea behind community notes is, well, how do we have a consensus-driven, so it's not really censoring it, but consensus-driven approach to truth. How do we make things the least amount untrue? Like you can say, one can't perhaps get to pure truth, but you can aspire to be more truthful. So the thing about community notes is it doesn't actually delete anything. It simply adds context. Now that context could be, this thing is untrue for the following reasons. But importantly with community notes, everything is open source actually. So you can see the software, every line of the software. You can see all of the data that went into a community note, and you can independently create that community note. So if you see manipulation of the data, you can actually highlight that and say, well, there appears to be some gaming of the system, and you can suggest improvements. So it's maximum transparency, which is, I think,
combined with the kind of wisdom of the crowds and transparency to get to a better answer.
And really, one of the key elements of community notes is that in order for a note to be shown, people who have historically disagreed must agree. And there is a bit of AI usage here. So we'll populate a parameter space around each contributor to the community notes, and then parameter space. So everyone's got basically these vectors associated with them. So it's not as simple as right or left. It's saying it's several hundred vectors that because things are more complicated than simply right or left. And then we'll do sort of inverse correlation. Say okay, these people generally disagree, but they agree about this note.
Okay, so then that
gives the note credibility. That's the core of it, and it's working quite well.
Yeah.
I've yet to see a note actually be present for more than a few hours that is incorrect. So the batting average is extremely good. And when I ask people, say, oh, they're worried about community notes sort of being disinformation, like send me one, and then they can't. So I think it's quite good. I mean, the general aspiration is with the X platform is to inform and entertain the public, and to be as accurate as possible and as truthful as possible, even if someone doesn't like the truth. People don't always like the truth.
No.
Not always. But that's the aspiration, and I think if we stay true to the truth, then I think we'll find that people use the system to learn what is going on, and to learn that I think actually truth pays. So I think it'll be what I mean, assuming you don't want to engage in self-delusion, then I think it's the smart move. So.
Excellent, very helpful. Right, let's open it up to all our guests here. We've got some microphones. They'll come. Put your hands up. They'll come and find you. We've got go for it. Thank you.
Good evening, Alice Benting from Entrepreneur First. Thank you for a fascinating conversation. I suppose a question for each of you. Prime Minister, the UK has some of the best universities in the world. We have the talent. What will it take for the UK to be a real breeding ground for unicorn companies? And Elon, being a founder in the UK is still a non-obvious career choice for the most exceptional technical talent. What are the cultural elements that we need to put into place to change this? Thank you both.
Well, you want to go first? Go for it.
Sure. Well, you're right that there are cultural elements where you know, the culture should celebrate creating new companies, and there should be a bias towards supporting small companies, because they're the ones that need nurturing. The larger companies really don't need nurturing. So, you know, just you can think of it sort of like a garden. It's a little sprout that needs nurturing. If it's a mighty oak, it needs quite as much. So I think that is a mindset change that is important. But I should mention that London is, you know, London and San Francisco, the Bay Area, are really the two centers for AI. So London is actually doing very well on that front. But the two leading locations on Earth. You know, San Francisco is probably ahead of London, but London's really very strong. The London area, Great London,
Keep going.
So I'm just saying objectively this is the case. But you do need that. You need the infrastructure. You need landlords who are willing to rent to new companies. You need law firms and accountants that want to support new companies. And it's generally it is a mindset change. And I think some of that is happening, but I think really it's just culturally people need to decide this is a good thing.
Yeah. No, actually, well, thanks for what you said about the UK. It's something that we work hard on. Lots of people in the room are part of what makes this a fabulous place for innovative companies, including Alice. So, Alice, what I'd say is, you know, my job is to get all the nuts and bolts right. Make sure that all of you who are starting companies can raise the capital that you need. Everything from your seed funding with our incredible EIS tax reliefs, all the way through to your late stage rounds, and we need reform of our pension funds, and the Chancellor's got a bunch of incredible reforms to unlock capital from all the people who have it and deploy it into growth equity, right? That is a work in progress. We're not there yet, but I think we're making good progress. We need talent, we need people, so that means an education system that prioritizes the things that matter. And you've seen my reforms, I go on about more maths. But I think that is important. But also attracting the best and the brightest in. If you look at our fastest growing companies in this country, and I think it's probably the same in the US, over half of them have a non-British founder. Right? So that tells you we've got to be a place that is open to the world's best and brightest entrepreneurial talent. So the visa regime that we've put in place, I think, does that. Makes it easy for those people to come here. And then actually it's the thing that we spent the beginning of the session talking about, the regulations. Making sure that we've got a regulatory system that's pro-innovation, that, of course we always need guardrails on the things that will worry us, but we've got to create a space for people to innovate and do different things. Those are all my jobs. The thing that is tougher is the thing that Elon talked about, which is culture, right? It's how do you transpose that culture from places like Silicon Valley across the world, where people are unafraid to give up the security of a regular paycheck to go and start something, and be comfortable with failure. You talk about that a lot. I think you talked about it more when you were playing games, right? But that you've got to be comfortable failing and knowing that that's just part of the process. And that is it's a tricky cultural thing to do overnight, but it's an important part of, I think, creating that kind of environment.
Yeah, if you don't succeed with your first startup, it shouldn't be a sort of a catastrophic career-ending thing. It should be, well, good. I think you generally should be like, well, you gave it a good shot. And now try again.
Exactly.
So one thing I was going to mention is obviously creating a company is sort of a high risk, high reward situation. But I don't know quite how it works in the UK. I think it's probably better than continental Europe. But the stock options are very difficult in most parts of Europe. I'm not sure how it is in the UK, but if somebody's basically going to risk the sort of life savings and the vast majority of startups fail. So, you hear about the startups that succeed, but most startups consist of, a massive amount of work, followed by failure. That's actually most companies. And so it's a high risk, high reward, and so the high reward part does need to be there for it to make sense.
I think that was a very soft pitch for a tax policy. Chance that. But actually, I can tell you. So, AI agree, and we have. I think relative to certainly European countries, but certainly the US, definitely California, a much lower rate of capital gains tax.
Okay.
Right, so for those people who are risking and growing something, like we think the reward should be there at the end, but 20% capital gains tax rate. And on stock options, I don't know if we've got anyone from Index Ventures in the room. So, Index, one of our leading VC funds here,
Okay.
they do a regular report looking at most countries' tax treatment of stock options.
Yeah.
And when I was Chancellor, Treasury Secretary equivalent, we were, I think, down at, we were pretty good, but we were 4th or 5th. And I said, we need to, for exactly the reason that you mentioned, I was like, this has got to be the best place to innovate.
Yeah.
We need to move that up. And I think in the last iteration of that report, we had, because of the changes that Jeremy and I had made, we have moved up to, I think, second from memory.
Okay,
So
great.
hopefully that should give you and everyone else some comfort that we recognise that's important. Because when people work hard and risk things,
Yeah.
they should be able to enjoy the rewards of that.
High risk, high reward.
Yeah, and I think we very much have a tax system that supports that, and those are the values that I believe in, and I think most of us in this room probably will as well. Right, next question. I've got Seb in front of me, and then I'll come over here. Go on, Seb.
Thanks very much. We've talked about some really big ideas, global changing ideas. I'm really interested, particularly in the context of creation of science and technology super hubs and so on. How does that map onto the everyday lives of people living in, say, Austin, Texas, to choose one around more, in my case, Nottingham, East Midlands? How do you see that evolving for people every day?
The sort of everyday effect of AI.
For context, Elon, so Seb runs our equivalent of CVS, right, or Walgreens. So, when Ajay visited, right, so he's got millions of people coming in the shops every day, and it's making sure, how do we make this relevant? I think that's your question. How is this relevant to that person? Maybe actually, I'll go first on that, because I think it's a fair point. I was just going over with the team a couple of things that we're doing. Because I was saying, how are we doing AI right now that's making a difference for people's lives? And we have this thing called gov.uk, which is actually when it happened several years ago was a pioneering thing. All the government information brought together on one website, gov.uk, and so you need to get a driving license, passport, any interaction with government, it was centralised in a very easy, relatively easy to use way. Better than most. Better than most.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're about to deploy AI across that platform. So that is something that I think several million people a day use, right? So a large chunk of the population is interacting with gov.uk every single day to do all these day-to-day tasks, right? Every one of your customers is doing all those things. And so we're about to deploy AI into that to make that whole process so much easier. Because, some people will be like, look, well, I'm currently here and I've lost my passport and my flight's in 5 hours. At the moment that would require, how many steps to figure out what you do. Well, actually, when we deploy the AI, it should be that you could just literally say that and boom, 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 this is what we're going to do, walk you through it. And that's going to benefit millions and millions of people every single day, right? Because that's a very practical way in my seat that I can start using this technology to help people in their day-to-day lives, not just healthcare discoveries and everything else that we're also doing. But I thought that's quite a powerful demonstration of literally your day-to-day customer seeing actually their just day-to-day life getting a little bit easier because of something that Elon, Dennis and others in this room have helped create.
Yeah, no, exactly. The most immediate thing is just being able to ask, like having a very smart friend that you can ask anything.
Right.
Ask how to make something, how to solve any problem, and it'll tell you. And obviously companies are going to adopt this. So I think we'll have much better customer service, I guess, essentially. That'll probably be the first thing that is. And then we talked about education. So having a tutor, so if you're trying to understand a subject, like having a phenomenal tutor on any subject, that's really pretty much there already almost. I mean, we need to, obviously, AI needs to stop hallucinating before, it can't give you, we still have a little bit of a problem where it can give you an answer that's confidently wrong, with great grammar. And bullet points and everything in citations, which is not real. So it has to be, okay, we need to make sure it's it's not giving you confidently wrong tutor answers. But that's going to happen pretty quickly where it is actually correct. So yeah.
I was going to say, for any parent who was homeschooling during COVID and realizing what their kids needed to be helped with,
Yeah.
that will come as an enormous relief, I think.
Yeah.
Very, very good. Right, have we got, well, let's go questions over here. Who have we got? Have we got any microphones, or Brent, are you there? Perfect.
Hi, Brent Hubman. So, you've spoken eloquently about abundance and the age of abundance. So it feels like obviously with AI, it's everything, everywhere, all at once. But with robots, and to get the age of abundance, we'll need a lot of robots. I know you're working a lot on robots as well. Are there sort of constraints that we should think of, and our politicians should be thinking of, that one country might get heavily behind in robots that can do all these things and enter the age of abundance, and therefore be at a strategic disadvantage?
Well, really anything that can be actuated by a computer is effectively a robot. So you can think of, frankly, Tesla cars are robots on wheels. Anything that's connected to the internet is effectively an endpoint actuator for artificial intelligence. You've got Boston Dynamics. Obviously, they've been making impressive robots for a while. I think they're at this point mostly owned by Hyundai, so I guess Hyundai's probably going to make robots that are humanoid and some rather interesting shapes that I wasn't anticipating, like the one that looks like it has wheels and looks sort of like a kangaroo on wheels. I'm not sure what that is, but it's a little demented, frankly. But there's going to be all sorts of robots. You've got the company Dyson in the UK, which does some pretty impressive things. I think the UK will not be behind, actually, on that front. The UK also has ARM, which is really the best, one of the best, perhaps the best, in chip design in the world. Tesla uses a lot of ARM technology. Almost everyone does, actually. So I think the UK is in a strong position. Germany obviously makes a lot of robots, industrial robots. I think generally countries that make robots of any kind, even if they seem somewhat conventional, will be fine. I do think there is a safety concern, especially with humanoid robots, because at least the car can't chase you into this building very easily, or chase you up a tree, or you can sort of run up a flight of stairs and get away from Tesla. I think there's a Stephen King movie about that. If your car gets possessed. But if you have a humanoid robot, it can basically chase you anywhere. So I think we should have some kind of hardwired local cutoff that you can't update from the internet. So anything that can be software updated from the internet obviously can be overridden. But if you have a local sort of off switch where you perhaps say a keyword or something, and then that puts the robot into a safe state, some kind of localized safe state ability, an off switch, where you don't have to get too close to the robot. I don't know. So if we've got millions of these things going all over the place,
You're not selling it, just like that.
No, I know. I'm saying it's something we should be quite concerned about, because if a robot can follow you anywhere, then what if they just one day get a software update and they're not so friendly anymore? Then we've got a James Cameron movie on.
It's actually it's funny you say that, because in our session that we had today, I would say they made exactly the same point. Right? And so they're talking about movies, without mentioning James Cameron. They're talking about James Cameron movies, and they're saying, if you think about it, it's not just those movies, but any of these movies, trains, subways, metros, cars, buses. They said all these movies with the same plot fundamentally all end with the person turning it off, right? Or finding a way to shut the thing down. And they were making the same point that you were about the importance of actual physical off switches.
Yeah.
And so all the technology is great, but fundamentally this same movie is played out 50 times. We've all watched it, and
Yeah.
it all fundamentally, point I'm referring to, right? It all ends in pretty much the same way, with someone finding a way to just
Yeah.
do
Not
the
at all.
thing. And, which is a kind of interesting. You said a similar point, right?
Yeah.
It's probably not the obvious place you'd go to, but
Maybe that could be one of the tests for the AI. We should say, like, blank is your favorite James Cameron movie. Fill in the blank.
yeah, excellent. Right, yes, we got over there. Yep, perfect.
Hi, question for you both. So I'm a founder of a AI and ML scale-up in the third centre for AI, which is Leeds in the north of England. I'm a bit biased. Since the launch of ChatGPT, 3 months after that, we saw a real increase in phishing attacks using much more sophisticated language patterns. What do we do to protect businesses, consumers, so that they trust this technology better? And how do we bring them along that journey with us?
Well, I think we shouldn't trust it that much, actually. It is actually quite a significant challenge, because we're getting to the point where even open source AI can pass human capture tests. So, this is, are you a human? Identify all the traffic lights in this picture. You're like, okay. Yeah, it's going to have no problem doing that. In fact, it'll do it better than a human and faster than a human. So we're like, how do you, at the point at which it's better passing human tests than humans, then, well, what tests actually make sense? That is a real problem. I don't actually have a good solution to it. One of the things we're trying to figure out on the X platform is how to deal with that, because we really are at the point where even with open source, readily available AI, you don't need to be sort of leading in the field. You can actually be better than humans at passing these tests. And that's sort of why we're thinking, well, perhaps we should sort of charge $1 or £1 a year. It's a very tiny amount of money, but it still makes it prohibitively expensive to make 1 million bots. Or especially if you need 1 million payment methods, then you run out of sort of stolen credit cards pretty quickly. So that's sort of where we're thinking, like, we might have to sort of just charge some very tiny amount of money, 0.3 cents a day effectively, to deal with the onslaught of AI-powered bots. And that is still a growing problem, but it will be, I think, perhaps an insurmountable problem next year. So, and then you have to worry about, well, manipulation of information, making something seem very popular when in fact it is not, because it's getting boosted by all these likes and reposts from AI-powered bots. So that's why I sort of think somewhat inevitably it leads to some small payment in order to dramatically increase the cost of a bot. So frankly, I think probably any social media system that doesn't do that will simply be overrun by bots.
I think my general answer would be, we need to show that we are on top of mitigating the risk, right? So people can trust the technology. That's what actually the last couple of days has been about on the Safety Summit, is just showing, we're investing in the Safety Institute, having the people who can do the research on these things to figure out how we mitigate against them. And we have to do it fast, and we have to keep iterating it, because I think all of us probably in this room believe that the technology can be incredibly powerful, but we've got to make sure we bring people along that journey with us, that we're handling the risks that are there. And as I said, there's a job to do the last couple of days. I think we made good progress on it, because we want to focus on the positives and manage these things, but that requires action, and that's what the last couple of days have been about. Your analogy there was part of the research that actually, the team working on the task force here published and presented yesterday. I don't know if you saw it. Which is essentially that it was using AI to create a ton of fake profiles on social media and then infiltrate particular groups with particular information.
Yeah.
Right? And actually, at the moment, that is essentially your point. That is like cost.
It's getting to the point where it's like, really, you can have 100 for a penny, sort of thing. Ridiculous.
And if you think about some of these social networks at quite a neighborhood or town level, it's not that many fake profiles that you need to quickly create. Suddenly they're everywhere, and there's some local issue that might be of importance, and the team have run versions of how that would look like, and suddenly they're interacting with everybody and then spreading misinformation around.
Yeah, no, it's a real
point,
challenge.
Right? We literally, as part of the research that we published on misinformation yesterday, it's a real challenge.
Yeah, exactly. To your point, I mean, the images, you don't even need to steal somebody's picture, because that's traceable, but you can actually just say create a new image of a person, realistic looking, doesn't exist, and then create a biography, realistic but doesn't exist, and do that en masse. And practically the only way you'll be able to tell is that the grammar is too good. Dead giveaway.
Yeah.
No typos? Come on.
Now, I'm getting waved at because I think we are out of time. I know we take one very brief last question, and let's make it go on. Yes, sir, go on, you're right in front of me, go on.
Elon, question for you. Related to the X platform. Are there simple things we can do, especially when it comes to visual media? You alluded to the fact that it's fairly straightforward and effectively free to make people like yourself say and do things that you never said or did.
Yeah.
Can we do something like cryptographically signed media? I'm from Adobe. We're working on this project.
Yeah.
Twitter was a member. I'd love to see X come back.
Okay.
Digitally signed media to indicate not only what was created by AI, but what came from a camera, what was real, to imbue a sense of trust in media that can go viral.
That sounds like a good idea, actually. Some way of authenticating would be good. So, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. We should probably do it.
There you go. And actually, on that point, so I've already, so this is particularly pertinent for people in my job, right? And I've already had a situation happen to me with a doctored image that goes everywhere, negative. By the time everyone realizes, well, that's fake and we should stop sending it, the damage is done. And actually, we were again reflecting today. If you think next year you've got elections in, I think, the US, India, I think Indonesia, probably here. There you go. Massive news. And actually, you've got just an enormous chunk of the world's population is voting next year. And you've got EU elections as well.
Yeah.
Actually, just these issues are right in front of us. Next year is when big elections across the globe, probably the first set of elections where this has been a real issue.
Yeah.
So figuring out how we manage that is, I think, mission critical for people who want the integrity of our democracy.
Yeah, I mean, some of it is quite entertaining, like the Pope in the puffer jacket. Have you seen that one?
I haven't.
That's amazing. But I mean, I still run into people who think that's real. I'm like, well, what are the odds he's wearing a puffer jacket in July in Rome? Be sweating. But it actually looked quite dashing. In fact, I think AI fashion is going to be a real thing. So I don't mean doom and gloom, but like we live in the most interesting times, and I think this is it is 80% likely to be good and 20% bad. And I think if we're cognizant and careful about the bad part, on balance, actually, it will be the future that we want, or the future that is preferable. And it actually will be somewhat of a leveler, an equalizer, in the sense that I think everyone will have access to goods and services and education, and so I think probably it leads to more human happiness. So I guess I'd probably leave on an optimistic note. Yeah.
That is a great note to end on. I think that we all want that better future.
Yeah.
I think it's there. The promise of it is certainly there. Lots of people in this room, including yourselves, are working hard to make it happen. Our job in government is to make sure it happens safely. But on the basis of this conversation in the last couple of days, I'm certainly leaving more confident that we can make that happen.
Yeah.
It's been a huge privilege and pleasure to have you here.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good to see you, Elon. It's been almost 6 years where I sat with you here in this platform with a great audience. It was your first trip to Dubai with your family. I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was wonderful. Very much enjoyed. I see my head is gigantic on the stage. My head has grown larger since we last met.
Is it because of Twitter?
Yeah, I don't know, perhaps. Twitter is certainly quite the roller coaster.
Elon, just it's been 6 years. Within 6 years, we've seen tremendous things since our last conversation. We've seen the pandemic, Russian-Ukrainian war, development of ChatGPT. You launched Starship. You recently also acquired Twitter. Can I ask you this question? Why you bought Twitter? Why didn't you create your own platform? Maybe it was cheaper for you?
I mean, I thought about creating something from scratch, but I thought Twitter would perhaps accelerate progress versus creating something from scratch by 3 to 5 years. I think we are seeing just a tremendous technology acceleration that 3 to 5 years is actually worth a lot. So, I mean, to be frank, I was a little worried about the direction that and the effect of social media on the world, and especially Twitter. And I thought it was very important for there to be a maximally trusted sort of digital public square where people, within countries and internationally could communicate with, the least amount of censorship allowed by law. Obviously, that varies a lot by jurisdiction, but I think in general, social media companies should adhere to the laws of countries and not try to put a thumb on the scale beyond the laws of countries. I think this is something that is probably agreeable to the legislators and the people of most countries. So I think that's the general idea, is just to reflect the values of the people, as opposed to imposing the values of essentially San Francisco and Berkeley, which are somewhat of a niche ideology as compared to the rest of the world. But Twitter was, I think, doing a little too much to impose a niche San Francisco Berkeley ideology on the world. I thought it was important kind of for the future of civilization to try to correct that thumb on the scale, if you will, and just have Twitter more accurately reflect, like I said, the values of the people of Earth. That's the intention, and hopefully we succeed in doing that.
But how do you see Twitter? If we say 5 years down the road, what's your vision for this platform? What should it do?
Well, I think I'd like to, have this sort of long-term vision for something called X.com from way back in the day, which is kind of like a sort of like an everything app, where it's just maximally useful. It does, payments, it does, so it provides financial services, provides information flow, really anything digital, and also provides secure communications. So really I think be as useful as possible, as entertaining as possible, and also to be like a source of truth. Like if you want to find out what's going on and what's really going on, then you should be able to go on X, the X app, and find out. So it's a sort of source of truth and a maximally useful, I guess app is about the wrong word, but system. And Twitter is essentially an accelerant to that sort of maximally useful everything app. Yeah.
How you are gonna? I mean, if you look at Twitter today, I mean, it's a platform. Sometimes there is a lot of misinformation in Twitter. sometimes I don't feel comfortable even because there is some way there is this negative between nation, between people, between a different ethnic group. There is this hate thing. How you are gonna fix this issue where you are on a mission for humanity to get them together?
I think there's something that we're putting a lot of effort into called community notes. It's currently just in English, but we will be expanding it to all languages. And that is, I think, quite a good way to assess the truth of things, where it's the community itself, basically the people of Earth who are basically, not exactly voting, but competing to provide the most accurate information. So it's sort of a competition for truth. And I think it's a very powerful concept to have a competition for truth. And you can also say, like, what is true? Because what may be true to some may not be viewed as true to others, but you want to have the closest approximation of that. So I think the community notes thing is very powerful. I think we try to have as many organizations and people and institutions verified as being legitimately those people and organizations is important. And to have the organizational affiliation clearly identified, so that if you want to find out if somebody's actually, if an account is actually, say, from a member of parliament or a journalist, or let's say if a Twitter handle is actually belongs to, say, Disney Corporation or something like that, you can go on Twitter and it's sort of an identity layer of the internet, and you can confirm that that is in fact the case. And I think once you've got these sort of interlocking sort of identities, it's actually very hard to be deceptive in that case, because and it's also, you have a reputation to protect at that point. So I think then people are far more likely to be measured in their response, and be more reasonable, since they have reputational value at that point. So these are some of the ideas that I have, and I'm not saying that for sure it will succeed or that it's going to be perfect, but I am confident that it will, over time, head into a good direction. And I think that the evidence for that will be, do people find it useful? As we're measuring sort of the total user minutes, but not just user minutes, unregretted user minutes is, I think, the key figure of merit. Because while, for example, TikTok has a very high usage, I often hear people say, well, I spent 2 hours on TikTok, but I regret those 2 hours. I'm not trying to knock TikTok, but it's just, we don't want that to be the case with Twitter. We want to say, like, okay, you spent half an hour on Twitter, but you found it to be useful and entertaining and a good thing in your life. And ultimately be a force for good for civilization. That's the aspiration.
Thank you. Elon, we have over 150 government within the World Government Summit, global leaders. They have 8 billion customers, their citizens. How government can use Twitter better to serve its citizens?
Well, I think generally, I would recommend, really communicating a lot on Twitter, and I think it's good for people to speak in their voice as opposed to how they think that they should speak. Sometimes like people think, well, I should speak in this way that is expected of me. But it ends up sounding, I think, at times somewhat stiff, and not real. Like if you read a press release from a corporation, it just sounds like propaganda. So I would encourage CEOs and companies and legislators and ministers and so forth to speak authentically, and to if there's a particular policy, to explain it, and I think there's sometimes a concern about criticism, but I think at the end of the day, you know, having some criticism is fine. You know, it's really not that bad. I mean, I'm constantly attacked on Twitter, frankly, and I don't mind. It's you know, you have to be somewhat thick-skinned, I suppose, at times. You know, just because they're really will try to twist the knife. But I think just like I said, just as a forum for communication, it's great, and I would just encourage more communication. And like I said, to sort of speak in an authentic voice. Like sometimes people will have someone else be their sort of Twitter manager or something like that. And I think people should just do their own tweets, you know? It sounds, and like sometimes you make a mistake or something, it's fine. But I think just doing your own tweets, just like you would do your own, you know, you give a talk here, or you would, you know, have a meeting at a summit or something. I think that's the way to do it, is to actually do the tweets yourself, and convey the message that you want directly. Yeah. So, but you know, I mean, one thing I should say, and I know this is called the World Government Summit. But I think we should be maybe a little bit concerned about actually becoming too much of a single world government. If I may say, that we want to avoid creating a civilizational risk by having, frankly, this may sound a little odd, too much cooperation between governments. You know, if you look at, say, at history and the rise and fall of civilizations, that really all throughout history, civilizations have risen and fallen, but it hasn't meant the doom of humanity as a whole, because there've been all these separate civilizations that were separated by great distances. And so, you know, say like while Rome was falling, Islam was rising, and so you had like you know, the sort of caliphate doing incredibly well while Rome was doing terribly. And that actually ended up being a source of preservation of knowledge and many scientific advancements. And so, so I think we want to be a little bit cautious about being too much of a single civilization, because if we are too much of a single civilization, then if the whole thing may collapse. I'm obviously not suggesting war or anything like that, but I think we want to be a little bit wary of actually cooperating too much. It sounds a little odd, but we want to have some amount of civilizational diversity, such that if something does go wrong with some part of civilization, that the whole thing doesn't collapse, and you know, humanity keeps moving forward.
Thank you. I hear you. I agree and disagree with you at a certain point, and I think, you know, today people, they don't fight with sword anymore. I mean, they have nuclear weapons. So there is this conflict. The whole civilization will be gone. The whole human civilization will be gone. And what we are trying to do here at the Emirates actually is to do exactly what you're saying. We have 180 nationalities. You have every single race, every single religion, and we're trying to create a model that show the world that it doesn't matter who you are, what your color, what's your religion, where you're from, humanity can live in peace and harmony.
Yeah, I mean, that would be great.
My last question, I'll go to Twitter again, then we'll move out of Twitter if you allowed us. I mean, you've been running Twitter as the chairman, as the owner, as the CEO, and that's take a lot of time. Did you identify a CEO, and when you are going to hire him?